Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into a topic that, well, touches pretty much all of us, right? Cancer.
Hmm.
It's this huge global health thing, can feel a bit much sometimes.
It really can.
But what often gets missed, and what we really want to dig into today, are those everyday choices, lifestyle things that can seriously cut down the risk.
Exactly. And specifically, we're focusing on diet. Its role is, well, it's often really underestimated.
Totally. So where are we getting our info for this deep dive?
Okay, so we're grounding this conversation in some really solid stuff. Insights from a presentation by Mingyang Song. He's a Harvard professor, clinical epidemiology and nutrition.
Right.
That was at the American Association for Cancer Research meeting, the 2025 one. And also, we're pulling from our recent review in Nutrients, which updates the American Cancer Society guidelines, the ACS ones.
Got it. So our goal here is basically to boil down what we know about how specific foods, dietary patterns, can either raise or lower your cancer risk.
Yeah, give you some actionable takeaways, hopefully make this complex topic a little clearer.
Okay, let's do it. So the big headline seems to be, diet matters a lot.
It's striking, isn't it, just how big a role diet plays? I mean, the sources really hammer this home. It's not just a factor, it's often a really significant one you can actually do something about.
More than genetics sometimes.
For many people, potentially, yes. The research suggests it's not just correlation. There's a real sort of causal influence there that we often don't fully appreciate.
That's huge. But, there's so much conflicting advice out there. What's like the biggest myth about diet and cancer that these sources helped clear up for you?
I think the idea that it's minor compared to, say, genetics or, random chance. These sources really show that, nope, our daily food choices, they give us a direct lever for prevention. It puts some power back in your hands.
That's a really empowering way to look at it. And of course, diet's key, but it's not the only piece of the puzzle, right? We should probably mention that.
Oh, absolutely. It fits into a bigger picture. Things like, regular screenings, managing stress, trying to minimize exposure to environmental toxins. Those are all really important too for lowering risk.
Right. It's all connected.
Exactly. And these simple preventative steps, they add up. It's not about being scared. It's about equipping yourself, taking charge of your long-term health.
Okay, so let's dive into the specifics. What foods or habits are actually increasing risk?
Sure.
First up, the big one.
Yeah.
Ultra-processed foods. UPFs. Professor Song focused on these.
He really did. His presentation broke down why they raise risk. First off, their nutrient profiles are just poor. Meaning they're typically packed with salt, sugar, they're energy dense, high in saturated fat, but really low in fiber and essential vitamins compared to, whole foods.
Okay, lacking the good stuff. But what really got me, and I bet listeners too, is this idea that the processing itself can create harmful things, not just that they're empty calories.
Yes, that's a crucial point. It's not just what's missing, it's what's potentially added or created. Professor Song highlighted this.
Like what?
A specific example he gave is when processed meat gets cooked at high temperatures. You can get these compounds called heterocyclic amines, HCAs.
Right, HCAs. I've heard of those.
Yeah, they form when muscle meats react with sugars and amino acids under heat. So you've got this, two-pronged issue, taking out the good stuff, potentially adding harmful stuff through the processing itself.
Wow, okay. That makes the risk feel much more tangible.
And interestingly, while research is still ongoing for many cancers, the link seems strongest right now between ultra-processed food intake and colorectal cancer.
Okay, so UPS are one category. What else should we be mindful of? Red and processed meats always come up.
They do, and for good reason. Diets high in red or processed meats are consistently linked to higher cancer risk in general.
Any specific cancers mentioned?
Well, one large UK study specifically linked high intake of red and processed meat to a higher risk of lung cancer.
Lung cancer, interesting. Now, you mentioned dietary patterns, things like pro-inflammatory diets being linked to lung cancer risk. What does that actually mean, a pro-inflammatory diet? Is it just the sum of its parts or something more?
It's definitely about the overall pattern, the synergy. A pro-inflammatory diet is generally one that's high in things like refined carbs, unhealthy fats, trans fats, too much omega-6, and yes, processed foods.
Yeah.
These foods tend to fuel chronic low-grade inflammation throughout the body. And we know that chronic inflammation is a major driver of cancer development. So yeah, the overall quality really matters.
That makes sense. So kind of the opposite of anti-inflammatory foods like fruits and veggies.
Exactly. And speaking of patterns, what about low-carb diets? They're super popular. What did the research show there?
Yeah, good question.
It's actually a bit mixed, kind of complex. The sources indicated a link between low-carb diets and an increased risk for colorectal and lung cancer.
Oh, really?
Increase?
Yeah. But interestingly, a reduced risk for gastric cancer.
Ah, so it really depends on the cancer type. It seems so. And probably also depends heavily on what makes up that low-carb diet, right? Is it full of processed meats and unhealthy fats, or is it rich in non-starchy vegetables and healthy fats? Big difference.
Good point. It's not just about the macros. Micronutrients matter too, and even heavy metals.
Yeah, the sources mentioned exposure to heavy metals like copper, lead, zinc being associated with increased cancer risk.
And what about iron? I remember seeing something about that.
Right, iron was interesting because it was kind of conflicting. Heme iron, that's the type you get from animal sources.
Right, red meat.
Exactly. That was associated with increased lung cancer risk. But its role is definitely complex, and honestly, we need more research to fully understand what's going on there.
Okay, so that's a rundown of some of the risks. Let's flip it. What about the good stuff? What foods and patterns actively help protect us?
All right, the positive side. The message here is actually pretty consistent across the board. Diets loaded with fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts. These are winners.
Why? What are they doing?
They're basically packing your body with antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds. These help protect your cells from damage. They reduce that chronic inflammation we talked about. Both super important in preventing cancer from starting or growing.
Makes sense. And were there specific links, like lower risk of certain cancers?
Yep. High intake of fruits, veggies, whole grains linked specifically to a lower risk of lung cancer in these studies.
Okay. And I saw something about phytoestrogens. What are those?
Ah, right. Phytoestrogens are plant compounds that can sort of weakly mimic estrogen in the body. You find them in things like soy, flax seeds, lots of fruits and veggies.
And they help.
The thinking is they might reduce lung cancer risk through various ways, maybe antioxidant effects, maybe other mechanisms. It's still being studied, especially for hormone-related cancers.
Oh, you got to give a shout out to broccoli, right?
Oh, definitely. Cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, kale, they get special mention. They have these compounds like sulforaphane, known for their cancer-fighting properties.
Okay. And yogurt came up too.
Yeah, some studies suggest yogurt might be beneficial, probably linked to gut health, the microbiome.
Interesting. So, zooming out to dietary patterns again, the Mediterranean diet often gets praised. How did it fare?
Very well. It emphasizes fruits, veggies, fish, olive oil, and it was linked to a lower risk of lung and breast cancer.
But there was a question mark around something called TMAO. What's that?
Right, TMAO. It stands for trimethylamine N-oxide. It's a compound linked to heart disease and potentially some cancers. Your gut bacteria make it when you eat certain things, like red meat or eggs.
So why the mystery with the Mediterranean diet?
Well, some foods in the Mediterranean diet could potentially lead to TMAO, but the overall diet is still protective, so it suggests the interaction is complex. Maybe other parts of the diet counteract it or affect the gut bacteria differently. We need more research to figure out that interplay.
Fascinating. What about vegetarian or pescatarian diets?
Good news there, too. People following those patterns generally showed a lower overall cancer risk, especially for colon cancer.
Probably the higher fiber, lower processed meat.
Exactly. More fiber, healthier gut microbiome, less exposure to potentially harmful compounds in meat. It all adds up.
And just generally high-quality diets, nutrient-rich, low inflammation, linked to lower risk for things like squamous cell lung cancer.
Right. It really reinforces that overall quality message.
What about when we eat? Time-restricted eating came up.
Yeah, that was interesting. The idea that longer nighttime fasting, maybe eating breakfast a bit earlier, might lower prostate cancer risks?
How would that even work? Less time digesting.
Possibly. The hypothesis is it gives your body a longer window for cellular repair, reducing inflammation, improving metabolic health, kind of like optimizing the body's cleanup cycles. But again, more studies are definitely needed there.
Makes sense. And micronutrients too, getting enough zinc, selenium, vitamin C, and D seemed important.
Very important. Linked to lower risk and potentially better outcomes even for people with cancer. And remember the iron point.
Heme iron was potentially risky for lung cancer.
Right. But non-heme iron, the kind from plants, actually showed an inverse relationship with lung cancer risk, especially when they accounted for smoking history. So the source matters.
Wow, okay. And just to round it out, sometimes the answer is, we don't know, or it doesn't seem to matter, like dairy and breast cancer.
Exactly. Large studies showed no clear link there. Same for coffee or tea, and prostate cancer risk no significant associations found. Current evidence points to a neutral effect for those.
Okay, so that's a lot of information. How do we actually use this day to day? Let's talk practical swaps.
Yes, swaps. This is where it gets really actionable. And the key message from the sources is it's not about being perfect. Seriously.
Right, progress, not perfection.
Exactly. It's about making smarter, consistent choices, giving your body a better fighting chance over the long run.
Okay, let's do some rapid fire swaps. Red and processed meats, we know the risk. What's the swap?
Okay, instead of bacon, sausage, burgers, think plant proteins. Lentils, beans, tofu, even grilled mushrooms, they give you fiber, they're gentler on the system. None of those risky compounds from processing or heme iron.
Makes sense. Swap number 2. White grains bread, rice, pasta. We know whole grains are better. Why again?
Go for the whole grain versions. Brown rice, whole wheat bread, whole wheat pasta. It's not just fiber, though that's huge for gut health, especially colorectal cancer prevention. It's also about a more complex carb profile, more nutrients, antioxidants.
Okay, next, snack attacks. Ditching the chips, the processed stuff. What's the healthier grab?
Nuts, seeds, fresh fruit. These are packed with good fats, omega-3s, essential fatty acids, plus all sorts of phytonutrients like polyphenols that actively fight inflammation and cell damage. Way better than empty calories and weird additives.
Good one. What about just making your plate look better? Lack of color.
Aim for variety. Eat the rainbow, as they say. Get lots of different colorful vegetables on your plate. Especially push those cruciferous ones, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage. Their unique compounds are powerhouses for detoxification.
Love it. And finally, sugary drinks. Sodas, juices.
Easy swap. Big impact. Switch to water, maybe lemon water, green tea, even fresh coconut water. Green tea, for example, is loaded with catechins, antioxidants that research suggests can inhibit tumor growth. Get hydration without the sugar bomb.
Those are great simple swaps. So wrapping up, this deep dive really underscores how complex the diet cancer link is, right? It's not just one food, it's patterns, genetics, environment.
Absolutely. It's incredibly complex, and there's still a lot we don't fully understand. It means there's no single magic bullet food or nutrient.
Which means,
It means we need to focus on the overall dietary pattern, and it highlights where we still have gaps, like the exact mechanisms for how the Mediterranean diet works its magic on a cellular level, or the nuances of TMAO.
so lots more research needed.
Definitely. Future research needs to keep digging into those mechanisms, really nail down the effects of time-restricted eating, look closer at different alternative diets, the role of unprocessed carbs. The goal is always moving towards more personalized advice.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful. It really drives home how much power we have in our daily choices, especially with food, to influence our long-term health and, yeah, our cancer risk.
It's empowering, even amidst the complexity. While we know not all cancers are preventable through diet alone, making these positive shifts is a really significant step you can take.
It really is.
It is.
So for everyone listening, considering how much impact these everyday choices can actually have, maybe think about this. What's one small dietary shift you might explore this week? Just one thing. And how could that single change start a ripple effect for your health down the road? Something to chew on.